Welcome to the complete animation of Heather, the possum from DreamWorks' Over the Hedge. This is one of DreamWorks' earlier 3D animated films, and I gotta say, it's kind of interesting to see how it's aged. I think that a bunch of the things that it does have stood the test of time fairly well. I think that the fur still looks pretty good. I think that the lighting is really good in many areas. But then there are things that really don't seem to have aged very well. There are textures that look a little dated, not so clear. There are animations that seem a little stiff, especially with this character Heather. It's really interesting. Heather is part of the movie throughout the entire thing. She's there from the first time that you meet the whole family of woodland creatures all the way to the very end. But she doesn't do too much during parts that, like she doesn't have a speaking role in. It's like that's one of the things that's really weird about this movie. The entire family is basically stuck together the entire time, and it's like individual characters come out of the family at different times in order to be characters, but then when they aren't characters, they just sort of part of the whole. And Heather is definitely part of that. A bunch of the time, she's just reacting the same way that the rest of the family is reacting. But then sometimes she gets to actually have a talking role, and when she actually is a character and not just part of the group, I think that she's pretty cool. She's clearly like playing as the teenage daughter of the weird possum dad, and I think that as that character, she does a pretty good job. I think that one of the big problems with her when she is just part of the group, she doesn't really have any real like good animation within that. A bunch of the time you'll see in this, when she isn't doing something specifically, she's doing sort of generic, just standing there looking around sort of things. It's really weird. And it's like, if they cut out everything that wasn't her being a character, then this complete animation video would probably be 3 minutes long. But instead, it's more like 11 minutes long. And it's because she's just there the entire movie, even when she, as a character, isn't really there. Yeah, it's one of the weird things that this movie does. Like, it really does have the entire family there for so much of the movie, even when each individual member of the family doesn't really do anything. And so what you get with this movie is a bunch of characters acting as one giant character, and then every once in a while they step out from that giant character in order to actually show things about themselves. And because of that, this movie, it feels like it's really lacking in character development for everyone except for the main two characters, who are RJ, I believe his name is RJ, and Fern the turtle. And so, yeah, it's like those two are the main characters. They're the ones who get most of the dialogue. They're the ones who get basically all the character development. And then characters like Heather, she is mostly there along for the ride, and then gets one moment of supposed character development where she actually plays dead. Kind of like she's always rolling her eyes at how her dad plays dead like an opossum, but when she finally does it, I guess that's supposed to be sort of character development because she it's like less. I think that that moment is less about her actually playing dead, and I think it's more about her doing the thing that she was always getting annoyed at her dad for doing. Which I think that that's actually a pretty profound thing. Because I think most people growing up, can relate to having a dad who does things that makes everybody else roll their eyes. Like, for instance, my dad was always an avid photographer and always loved to go on vacations. And so, whenever it was time to go on vacations, my dad would always have his massive DSLR camera, and he'd always have us go and stand places and do things just so he could get pictures. And growing up with that, it's definitely one of the things that we would roll our eyes collectively as a family. Everyone, all my siblings, even my mom. But yeah, like now that we're older, we're actually really grateful that my dad did that because we have so many pictures of so many adventures that we went on. Like, yeah. And so the the fact that Heather in this movie sort of embraces the thing that she was always rolling her eyes at that her dad did, it's actually something like that's a real thing that happens where you realize that the things that your dad did that drove you up the wall, there's a reason he did that. And yeah, even like right now, I appreciate the pictures he took, and I realize that I myself sometimes take a lot of pictures at times. I don't think I'll ever be as into photography as my dad is. But look at me right now. I am a fully grown man who takes great pleasure in making videos that focus on the animation of single characters that in films that most people just consider to be kids' movies. And so, if I keep this up, maybe one day my own kids will roll their eyes at how their dad is more into cartoons than they are. Like, yeah, that's just how I think it is. I think that everybody who is fortunate enough to become a dad and spend his life with his kids, I think that those kids are gonna find things that their dad does that just drives them up the wall. And I think that even though you don't get to see very much of that with Heather and her dad, I think that what they do show is pretty good. It shows her, like, she always loves her dad, but it's not until she decides to finally embrace the thing that her dad always did that bugged her that she was able to gain a new appreciation for him. And I think that they are a good father and daughter pair. It's hard to... I think that this movie had too many characters. I really do. Like, it had too many characters. It had Heather, her dad, had the two porcupine parents with their 3 kids, had the squirrel, Hammy, and the skunk, and RJ, and Vern. Like, there's a lot of characters in here, and part of the problem with having so many characters is that individual characters find it hard to get their moment, to get their time in the limelight. And so, a character like Heather, who is there the entire movie, Heather is there, and we don't get to see much of the character. We get to see a bunch of the character model, Like this complete animation shows that the character model is put through its paces, but the actual character, the living, breathing, talking, wanting, desiring, the character of Heather, we really don't get to see much of her. In fact, if I condense this down to just the moments that really show the character Heather rather than the animation of Heather, I think that this would be probably a 2-minute video, in fact. And one of the problems with me making these videos is I don't rehearse them, and I just sort of have to make stuff up as I go along, and I'm having trouble making stuff up to say about Heather. But the bits of Heather that we see, and not just the animating model, I think that she's pretty cool. And yeah, I think this movie's pretty good too. Thanks for watching.